Jesus Christ, dude. What do you mean you dropped out at 16 and you retired your mom at 18? I mean, I thought South Africa, you're all broke and there's no money there. What's going on?
Yeah, we all live in huts over here. I got my first client, and like that was already enough to like make a full-time income. I think I literally only made like $400 my first month, and then the next month it was like 750. The next month was like 1100 or so. And around that point, I was like, okay, I can like sustain both me and my mom.
What the fuck is going on down there? You know, obviously in the news a lot. You know, the president of your country was in the White House, and it was a whole shabacle.
I got into like some self-help books and like YouTube videos and stuff like that, and I learned about something called the spotlight effect, where basically you feel like people are paying more attention to you than they actually are. But in reality, it's like, okay, they send you the message, you know, they maybe say something about it, make fun of you or whatnot, but tomorrow they're gonna forget about it. In the long term, it's really not gonna matter at all. You're gonna gain a lot more from it than you have to lose, like exponentially more. So yeah, just do it. Like, who cares?
You are about to embark on a journey, not just through space and time, but through the very fabric of human perception. Imagine a world where the familiar becomes strange, and the strange becomes familiar. A place where the boundaries of reality blur, and the only limit is your imagination. This is a voyage into the heart of the unknown, where every turn reveals a new perspective, and every story challenges what you thought you knew. Welcome to Bold Perceptions, where we explore the myriad ways people see the world and discover that sometimes the most extraordinary adventures lie just beyond the horizon of our own understanding.
Back in Bold, a beautiful but kind of chilly day in Curitiba. I didn't want to do any sort of winter again in my life, but I had a good opportunity down here, and you know, it's 60 degrees, I think 15 to 18. When the sun comes out in the afternoon, it's decent. But I booked a trip actually this weekend. I'm going to go to Balneário, whatever, Camboriú, the Dubai of Brazil, they call it. I've been hearing about it for a long time. And I'm on freaking Airbnb. I get this place, and it looks nice. You know, it's got the rooftop pool, jacuzzi, you know, right next to the beach. I got drones now, so I was going to do some cool drone shots. But then the guy messages me, the freaking host. He says, okay, to swim in the pool, you need a swimming certificate from a doctor. And if you don't have that, then I have a doctor in Brazil that you need to go to get. I said, dude, come on. I have like 100 stays in my Airbnb. I've been all over these hotels. No one's ever asked me for a swimming certificate. He's like, no, but sir, like you need to do it. So I said, fuck you. Like I'm going to cancel this, right? And normally like you cancel one of these things, you get a refund. All of a sudden I cancel it and I get an email, no refunds. I said, what the hell is going on? I mean, Airbnb, Solomon, my bad in pronunciation. We're Twitter friends, but you've been traveling. Have you dealt with this freaking Airbnb shenanigans or what?
No, I only really have experience with hostels so far. That was like my
Okay.
primary method of staying while I was gone. I was in a hotel for like a weekend at some point in Guyana, a random event, but yeah,
Wow.
mostly just hostels.
Yeah, man. The last couple years I've made the transition to Booking.com, and for the most part, it's been really solid for me. But yeah, I mean, hostel. Someone hears that, they're like, "Oh my God, you know, is this dude broke? I mean, who is he?" But you're young. You're freaking. How old are you?
Yeah, I'm 19 now, turning 20
Yeah,
soon.
and I've been pushing people like on the Twitter. They'd be like, "Oh, you know, if you're staying in a hostel in your 20s, you're a loser," and all this stuff. I said some of my best experiences have been in Europe, backpacking, or not backpacking, but doing the hostel life and meeting crazy people, the connections. I mean, especially when you solo travel. Now that I'm older, yeah, I prefer obviously Airbnbs, hotels, and whatnot. But I definitely think hostel life, it gets a bad reputation, but you can have beautiful moments. Hostel life. So, my friend, you were traveling in hostels in South America. I mean, that's a little more different. Tell me about that experience.
Yeah, I loved it honestly. Like it was definitely an eye-opening experience. It wasn't what I was expecting, you know, because like you kind of said, when I thought of hostels, I thought of like, you know, like broke teenagers backpacking Europe type of vibe, you know, like small rooms, things like that. But the hostels that I stayed in was pretty nice, honestly, and like it was such a diverse amount of people, basically. Like I would have like guys in their mid 30s or like early 40s working in like a high position Mercedes over there basically that I would meet there and I would go out with them and things like that. And then you have like the 18-year-old from somewhere else in Brazil, you know, that's like visiting for the weekend or something like that. You have like a lot of a lot of women from Argentina over there that also like have jobs. They might even have families or whatever, and like they also just came for like the Lady Gaga tournament. I mean, not tournament, concert or whatever. So it was like a lot of different people that I didn't expect, and the main thing I really liked about it was how social people were and how easy it was to socialize with people. That was the main attraction for me because, like you said, I was solo traveling, didn't know anyone in Brazil, didn't speak Portuguese, still don't really speak Portuguese. So that was like a big thing for me as well, and that made the experience so much better because it never felt like I didn't know anyone in Brazil. Like it always felt like I knew some people, and people were always inviting me to do things and all that. So yeah, it was a good experience overall.
Solo man, yes, I think everyone needs to experience the hostel life, okay? Especially when you're young. You're only freaking 19 years old, so that's the prime time to get in there. Try to get maybe a private room, but even once in a while, go in with the 16 bedroom
Yeah.
and experience the craziness. But I think you can get that similar networking in when you get out of that hostel thing in different spots. Okay, whether it's like the 5-star hotel, go work in the lobby, go stay there. Go to the cigar lounge, go to where the heavy hitters are. Like you can replicate that networking experience on the road without because there's a lot of characters in these hostels, right? And after you get to a certain age, you're like, no, I need my peace. I don't want to hear snoring. I don't want to be, partying every night. But it's definitely something that everyone needs to experience. You need to watch the movie Hostel from 2006. It's a horror travel film about Americans going backpacking through Europe, and it's just magical. The first half is like peak travel experience, and then it gets crazy. But I always recommend people to do the hostel stuff. But Solo Man, okay. Right now, we're dealing with a little Wi-Fi problem, but we're going to figure it out. I know that you're in South Africa. I don't know if that's the reason, but you're an interesting character that I've came across.
Possibly.
I've came across on the Twitter. Your bio, dropped out at 16, retired my mom at 18, and then you're a copywriter, basically. But the biggest thing I wanted to talk to you about was obviously that bio is freaking crazy, but also in the news right now, South Africa, Trump. I mean, it's a huge story. I did an episode in the past with someone that kind of talked to me about the real reckless stuff that's going on. This was last year, and I was sick to my stomach what I was hearing. But so those are two big things I want to get into. But I mean, first, Jesus Christ, dude, what do you mean you dropped out at 16 and you retired your mom at 18? I mean, I thought South Africa, you're all broke and there's no money there. What's going on?
Yeah, we'll live in huts over here. But yeah, that's kind of a long story, but long story short is I did homeschooling when you know, COVID hit basically. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that over here, but basically started doing homeschooling for a year. Turned out to be much more expensive than I thought it was. Mother was struggling to pay for it financially and all that. And I was just like, she's going through all of this and I don't even want to be here. I don't even want to be going to school because I knew from quite an early age already that I wasn't going to go to college, because I got into coding when I was like 12, 13 or something like that. And that kind of opened me to the world of like other like higher end careers, I guess you could say, and like online business and stuff like that. Because people were saying that like you don't need a college degree to get a good job as a developer and things like that. And I was like, oh well, I might as well just like go all in on the coding thing. So I did that for 4 years until that point. And I knew I was still kind of going to do something along the lines of that. And so the next year I did homeschooling for a year, um, like I said. And near the end of the year, I had a conversation with my mom where I was like, I'm really only doing this for you and my dad. Like, I'm just doing this to make you happy, like classic story, basically. And luckily, God bless her, she was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't want you to just do this for us, basically. Just like, I want you to do whatever's going to make you happy and whatever you want to do in life. So then I basically just explained to her what I wanted to do. I think at the time I was like making YouTube videos and like doing coding stuff. So it was like a mix of that, like building my personal brand around me being a developer and like teaching people how to code and stuff like that. Um, so I did that for a couple of months, and that was kind of the plan. And then I met a guy on YouTube actually, who was in Cape Town, which is like in South Africa, but quite far away from where I stay. And we got along, and he basically got me in an interview for an internship at a web development company that he was working for in Cape Town, basically. And so, yeah, I had the interview, but it ended up going well. But I basically like turned it down before I started because I just knew at the time I was going to be quite comfortable with the amount of money that I was making. I was gonna make, and I wanted to do like the whole freelancing, YouTube stuff, and all that. So I was just like, okay, let me just not do this now, continue doing what I'm doing. And then basically, I got into the money Twitter space. Found a bunch of people like Danco, like a bunch of the big accounts on there, kind of opened my eyes more to the creator economy, as they call it. And then I transitioned to doing marketing, like more high leverage work, basically. And yeah, I think within like the first 6 months, basically, of 2022, I I got my first client, and like that was already enough to like make a full-time income. I think I literally only made like $400 my first month. And then the next month it was like 750. The next month was like 1100 or so. And around that point I was like, okay, I can like sustain both me and my mom at this point, basically. Um, and then yeah, that kind of went on for a while. And then 2023 hit, my dad passed away, basically. And I had like a bunch of things going on with like his old business that I had to kind of take care of, because like he didn't get the chance to kind of figure out all of those things so that I didn't have to deal with it, because I never wanted it. And then basically around that time, like near the end of the year, I told her that if she could actually like help me with this, like take care of my dad's business and things like that, to free up some time for me to continue doing what I'm doing, I could make a lot more money with this, and I could like take that even further and all that. And that's kind of like the big reason why she ended up leaving her work. And like that's kind of like how I retired her, essentially. And soon after, I started making a lot more, and then it was like much more comfortable and all that. So that's kind of like the whole story behind that.
Well, very sorry to hear about your father. That's tough. It reminded me, man. Like I spent 3 months in Kenya, and every single person I met, oh yeah, my father died. Oh, my mother died at like young ages, and it was just
Mm,
like normal, you know. And compared to where I'm from in USA,
yeah.
it's like a lot of people grow up with their parents, but in Africa that happens a lot. Is that not true?
That's actually a good point now that you mention it. I've never thought about that before. But yeah, yeah, I think it's definitely a thing. A lot of people, yeah, they'll often be like some kind of disease, honestly, or illness. Like my dad, for example, he was a diabetic for like years, and he had a bunch of problems. He had like high blood pressure, he had high cholesterol. He also had like a condition where he was born with his heart on like the right side of his chest, not the left. And he had like um what do you call it, like water, like something like that, basically, like water in his lungs. Like I don't know what it was exactly, but like he had a lot of illnesses, and it was mostly like lifestyle related things, diet related things and all that, stress, I'm sure, and everything. And I think it's the same for everybody over here, for the most part.
Yeah, very interesting. So you were saying, okay, 400, 700, and then 1100 you hit, and that's kind of where it clicked in your head. Damn, I can get mother out of her job. I know the economy of Kenya. I know South Africa, I think, on the world stage has a higher GDP, but it's super unequal. It's like the most
Mm.
unequal country on earth. So $1,100 a month, I mean, for the average South African, I mean, you're living pretty good. I mean, what are people actually making there, you know?
That, yeah, like you said, that's kind of all over the place, to be honest. I think on average, people in a city like Cape Town, for example, will make anywhere from like 1,000 to like 1,000 to like $3,000 on the high end for like the normal person, that's like working at a job of sorts. And like, 3,000 on the high end is like they have like a pretty good job. They're like in their 30s or 40s, basically, you know. But yeah, I think that the average, according to Google, is like it's 24,000 rand. So that's like 12, yeah, like $1,200 a month or so, basically. And I think you could live on that in a city like Cape Town, which is probably the most expensive city to live in Cape Town in South Africa. But you're gonna just get by. Like you can have an apartment, you can buy yourself food, you can have like all the essential things you need, but like it's gonna be tough to have things like a car and go out and buy yourself clothing every month and things like that. Like it's gonna be kind of you're gonna be scraping by basically. So yeah, but most of the people where I stay, for example, which is more in like the rural part of things, like more, I guess you could say like countryside in a way. A lot of people just make like minimum wage over here, which is like pretty low for the most part. I think minimum wage in South Africa is about um what is it now? It's about $1.30 per hour, something like that. It's like ridiculously low, like $300 a month basically, or a bit less than that. So yeah, a lot of people where I'm from make that basically, but yeah, the average is probably around 1,200.
You made a good point. So you started doing YouTube videos, starting getting into like the online world. Put yourself out there. I assume like you put your work out there, and then all of a sudden it got attention from someone, right? And that someone, got that interview that you didn't take, in Cape Town. But I think there is something magical about that, and it's something I think you do with growing brands with the birdhouse it is or whatever. Tell me the importance about. Damn, I mean nowadays you're a kid from rural South Africa, and you can connect with all these people around the world and get all these different opportunities. I mean, it's crazy. Like, this is like something that our ancestors could never possibly ever imagine the opportunity we have.
Yeah, it's insane, honestly. Like I think it's one of those things that um I don't fully appreciate as much as I should. Like it's easy to take things for granted basically. But I would have never been doing the things that I've been doing now, or like even making the amount of money that I'm making now, if it wasn't for the internet and like starting a personal brand. And funny enough, like the way I got my first client was when I was like 16, right? And I didn't have any previous work to showcase. I didn't have like any experience working for anybody or anything like that. Literally, I think the exact tweet that got the guy interested in working with me, it was like a guy who had some kind of agency. He was from Belgium or something like that. It was a tweet of me saying that I wanted to make $500. Like that was my goal for like June 2022 or something like that, because like during COVID, people were getting retrenched and like they were working less and stuff like that. So my mom was probably going to be one of those people where she was either going to work less and get paid less, and we were already like just getting by as it was, or she would just like lose her job basically. So that kind of lit a fire up my ass. And I put that tweet out there, and the guy messaged me and he was like, "Oh, I'm interested in like buying a landing page from you." And I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I like spoke to him and everything, and like eventually closed the sale. And the same thing happened with like the second one, where the whole like again didn't have any previous work or anything like that. The main reason he ended up wanting to work with me and like he booked a call with me and everything was just because he said he read my tweets and my landing page, and it just felt like I I knew what he was going through. Like I understood him, and he was like, "You kind of seem like you know what you're talking about." It was like you seem like a smart guy, so like why not? Which is amazing. Like that's crazy to think about, because like I said, minimum wage over here, and like what I would have been expected to make at the time was probably like $300 a month. As like a holiday job or something like that over here. But I made like double that in the first 2 months basically, just from having a personal brand and all that. And I've been able to connect with so many people that I would have never thought I'd have some kind of relationship with now if it wasn't for that. And I've met up with some of them in person, and it's like it's just amazing. It completely changed my life.
That's beautiful, but it's because you had the balls to put yourself out there. I think a lot of people, they can never get over that barrier of, oh my God, what is Joe Schmo in my, village going to say about me because they saw a tweet, or, take the heat from putting a YouTube video out there from dumb comments and loser anon accounts. So like, I think that is what holds people back. But they got to understand though too, it's 99% positive for the interactions you have, unless you have something that just goes viral, right? And then you get all the losers that chime in there and hate on you. But for the most time, it is usually people that are like, oh, I like you, like let's do something. Oh, this is cool. Let's make something work. Like, and if you just start doing it and get over that hump that everyone is thinking about you nonstop and judging you, it's gonna pay off tenfold. And what would you give practical advice to someone anywhere, because everyone deals with this about just getting over that hurdle of getting into the online world of actually, putting yourself out there?
Mm. So what did help me quite a lot with this, because I imagine it would have been a lot more difficult if it were, yeah, if it wasn't this, if I didn't do this, but it was like choosing a platform where the people that I knew in real life weren't really on. Like people around me don't really have Twitter, so that made things a lot easier for myself. But like I said, I started posting YouTube videos at the time. And for some reason, somehow, a lot of people from my school back then found my YouTube videos, and like they would like message me every now and then and be like, "Oh, I found your YouTube videos." And like my family would like same thing would happen or whatnot. I don't know if it's because like, they show the to like the people that know you and stuff like that. But that was like kind of at the time it was like kind of embarrassing and everything, like typical story. But it was one of those things where I was like, my mindset at the time, because luckily I got into like some self-help books and like YouTube videos and stuff like that. And I learned about something called the spotlight effect, where basically you feel like people are paying more attention to you than they actually are. But in reality, it's like, okay, they send you the message, they maybe say something about it, make fun of you or whatnot. But tomorrow they're gonna forget about it. Like, and you're probably gonna forget it happened. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it'll be a week, maybe it'll be a month, but like in the long term, it's really not going to matter at all. And people don't really care as much as you think they are, as they do, So it's like you're going to gain a lot more from it than you have to lose, like exponentially more. So yeah, just do it. Like, who cares?
Genius. Yeah, the spotlight thing. That is great, great. What do they call that? Not a philosophy or like a theme. I don't know. But I read about that a while ago
Yeah.
too. I'm like, damn, that does make a lot of sense because I'm not thinking about that one dude that I said one thing to, 10 years ago or something. But maybe some people it sticks in their head, like a high school, like a bully. They got bullied in high school. And for the rest of their life, oh, that guy, but that guy might not even meant it like that, or it didn't even pass through his brain, but they've kept all that trauma inside of them and can't get over it. But the main point is the spotlight effect is 110% real. Unless you're freaking Donald Trump, I mean, no one really gives a fuck about you. You know what I mean? They give a fuck about you for 1 second, 10 seconds of their day. They forget about you. They got to go eat. They got to go make money. They got their own problems dealing with. I think a lot of people need to internalize that because they do feel like they have a million followers on their Instagram account when they post a photo, but they don't. So it's that's a very good thing. I also assume survival was in your mindset. Being from rural South Africa, your father freaking dying, your mother, maybe in a dead end type of job. So it was kind of like I hear the story all the time from people from the third world. I don't know if you like that term or not, but it's just like shit. I got nothing else to lose, so let's take a
Yeah.
jump.
Yeah, 100%. I wasn't even thinking about that at the time, like the thought of somebody seeing my content or something like that and like, I don't know, making fun of me or whatever. I literally did not cross my mind. Like you're making me think about this for the first time now. So yeah.
It's crazy. Okay, so before the South Africa stuff, because I want to talk about this, but so 12 to 16, you started like coding online. You got into the self help.
Yeah.
I assume because I've seen a lot of the young dudes here. They got into like the Andrew Tate thing back then. He blew up during the COVID with the Hustlers University. Who kind of got you on game? Did you go to Upwork? Did you watch a YouTube video that said, "Damn, I can make Wi-Fi money"? Kind of give me through that process
Mm.
after you developed those skills.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of I can't remember who it was specifically, like back when I was like 12, 13, but it was somebody in like the developer space, like the software developer space. I can't say who exactly. There were a lot of people, like I think there was one guy named um Raphael Quasi or something like that, clever programmer. He was like somebody I looked up to quite a lot back then in like Traversy Media. But eventually, like once I found Twitter, that was really the main thing. People like Dan Coe, he was a huge part of it. Like the whole reason I got my first client within like the I joined one of his communities at the time. His paid communities was like $27 a month or something. And I remember that was literally all the money I had left for some. I didn't even know how I got the money. I just got it somehow. But it was like spent the last bit of money I had. I was like, okay, I have like a month before my subscription gets canceled, basically. I just like speed ran through the entire library of courses and stuff in the community. And like I was super active in there and everything. And then within like the first 3 weeks of implementing everything and like setting up the funnel and blah blah blah, sending messages, I got my first client, so like he was definitely a huge influence, and he like opened my eyes to the whole idea of like the creator economy and leverage and things like that, basically. And then more so on the self-improvement side, I think before I even found Twitter was Hamza. I'm not sure if you know who he is exactly. He like became kind of big in the quite big in like the self-improvement space the last few years, and like Iman Ghazi, he was another one. I only came across Andrew Tate when I was like, when was that? Like 2020, 2023 or something? I'm not sure, but it was like fairly late after my initial like after my eyes became open to like all of these different things like self-improvement and working out and like online business and stuff like that. So he didn't have that big of an influence on me in that sense, unlike a lot of guys around my age from what I've seen. But he definitely played a positive impact on my life through like just some of the ideas that he shared and all that. Like I like a lot of the things that he talks about, and it's like there's a lot of mental models and things like that that I learned from him that I still use to this day. That's like super helpful and all that. But yeah, they were like the main guys, I'd say.
Yeah, the Andrew Tate topic is super nuanced. You have one side that listens to every word he
Yeah.
says, the other side that he's the worst thing that's ever happened. But you can take something from everyone, and you got to give the guy credit for the Pendulum. I think he was obviously Trump going down the escalator in 2016, but Tate, when he went out there, he really kind of, damn, maybe we became this way as a society, and this is why so many men are depressed and all that. And he kind of lit a spark in a lot of people mind. But okay, so zero to hero. Someone listening to this right now, even in the developed world that has a 9 to 5, but they don't like it. Someone freaking in Southeast Asia doing editing videos for $3 a video. What would you tell them to actually get to that next step where they can make this a full-time thing, where they can retire their mom, hopefully? Kind of like give me the speed course of, if I was going to start today, what do I do? Do I figure out what I like, what skill I want to learn? Then I go to Upwork. Then I make a Twitter account. Kind of give me something that would be beneficial to someone that wants to get in your shoes now.
Mm, that is a great question. I feel like I finally know how to articulate this after so many people asking me this now already. But basically, like, first thing I would do if I had to restart is I would figure out what my what I'm naturally good at, like what I've always naturally been good at, or what I just really enjoy doing, basically. So like you have different people who are like, for me, for example, I've always been creatively inclined. Like I remember one of my earliest answers to the question of like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Is I wanted to be an inventor. I didn't even know what that meant at the time, but it was like I just wanted to make something. I wanted to build something of my own. Um, and I was always good at like creative writing in school, for example. I literally saw a diploma of that in high school the other day. So it was like that was kind of funny to see. So like figure out, are you like a creative person? Do you like talking to people? Maybe you can get into sales then. Do you like technology and things like that? Maybe you can get into like programming or video editing or something like that. Like just figure out what that is exactly and then start learning some kind of skill related to that. So, like the copywriting, sales, video editing, coding, whatever it is. And ideally AI on top of that nowadays. Just because like it's being used for everything, like you need to have it nowadays for like these types of jobs and work and all that. Um, and then once you start doing that, either start documenting your journey online. That's personally what worked for me. People have mixed opinions on this about like whether or not you should start a personal brand by like, just documenting your journey, just sharing what you're learning and all that and what you're doing, or wait until you've accomplished cool things in real life and then start talking about them, you know. Um, Personally, I like the idea of the second approach a bit more. Like it seems cooler, but like in practicality, I was 16, you know what I mean? Like I didn't do any cool things at that point. I didn't have anything to talk about. So I just had to share what I was learning essentially and kind of just took the fake it till you make it type of route. So you need to kind of figure out what that is for you. And a lot of times it's how do I put this? Like people underestimate how interesting their lives are a lot of the times, I feel like, because things just become normal for you. Like I'm sure, like with you, for example, you've traveled to how many countries, you've like done all of these things, like you're like a football player and all that, like half of the year and everything. It's like it's kind of normal to you, but for other people it's super interesting, especially if you combine all of those things together and you start talking about it. It makes like a super unique personal brand. So like I would say, like, whatever it is, like don't even try and talk yourself out of it. Basically, just share whatever you're doing and whatever it is that you talk about on a daily basis, or like experience on a daily basis and things like that. Um, so you could do this, but I don't think it's necessary to like build a personal brand alongside of things. But I do think it's very helpful. Like it definitely is, because some people do like the more like like they just want to essentially be a ghost in a way, like they don't want to put their face out there and all that. It will make things significantly more difficult, I will say, but it could work, like especially if you live in like a big city, for example. That was one thing I never had going for myself, but I know a lot of people that kind of made this work through that. If you're in a big city and you can network with people, quote unquote, I don't really like the word, like just make friends with people, like tell people what you're doing, what you're trying to build, be a cool person, like give them some sort of value somehow, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be like money or anything like that, because that was always a thought I had of like, how can I provide value to these people that are like just more successful than me in general, in like most, like every aspect of life essentially. um Even if you can just like make them just feel good, like make them laugh or something like that, like just be good energy to be around. um just try and make connections, and like I said, let people know who you are, because if you can stay top of mind, and this is kind of like, I think fundamentally what makes the personal branding thing really work and help you get clients and stuff like that, or just make your business work in general, you just want to stay top of mind for as many people as possible about like what it is that you do specifically. Like if you can just become known as like the copywriting guy, and you have a bunch of people in the business space every time, because like people in these spaces, like businessmen and all that, they're oftentimes coming to each other with like their problems and like what they're building and all these things basically. So every now and then they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm thinking of hiring a copywriter soon, and like immediately you will come to their mind. It's like, oh, Suleiman, he's like a copywriter, I should refer him because like I like him, he's my friend or whatever. And then he tells you about the opportunity, or like he refers you to him, and then that's just how things happen. Like, so there's been so many instances of like me, for example, like I literally remember this now. The first seven-figure client I ever got, like the client that was like a millionaire, essentially, like biggest client I got at the time, came through me DMing him on Twitter because he followed me. He was one of, I think, literally the first big account on Twitter that ever followed me. And he was just like nice to me, like he shared with me like this booklet, this like Luke Belmar book list basically of like the books that made him the most successful. And like he just gave me some advice and stuff like that. So then 2 years later, I saw him and I was like, oh, I haven't spoken to this guy in a while. I messaged him and I was like, hey, bro, how are you doing? And everything. And I was like, I just wanted to let you know that like back then you really helped me out, like you were one of the first people in the space that helped me out and all that. I just wanted to say I appreciate it. And he was like, hey man, like what do you do now, by the way? And blah blah blah. And I just said like, oh, I do funnels and like marketing and stuff at the time. And then he was like, oh, I'm actually like trying to update my landing page right now, and my usual guy isn't available. Like, do you want to do it? And I was like, well, sure, like like sometimes things just happen like that. So definitely that. Try and build as many relationships as possible, and then somehow you just need to figure out how to do this for yourself. Just try and balance it all with still trying to like get better at whatever skill it is that you're developing. Like just continuously learn. Again, stay consistent with like building relationships, posting content and all that stuff, and then just figure out like what you actually want. Like do you want a big business? Do you want to like make an impact on the world and like have some kind of big mission, or do you just want a lifestyle business where you can like make enough to travel and like have hobbies and stuff like that? Do you want to retire your parents? Do you want to like support your family members and stuff like that? And then just make decisions around that basically, because a lot of times people will kind of just start like myself, but it happened many times where I would like essentially just chase building money, but then I kind of forgot why I started making money in the first place. And you kind of, I heard somebody say this the other day, but it was like you you sacrifice what you want for what you think is gonna get it, basically. So like you want freedom and you think money's gonna get you freedom. So you end up sacrificing the freedom that you want for the money because you think it's gonna get you that, but like you forget that like the freedom was what you wanted in the first place. So that's like, yeah, high level overview, I guess, of what I would have done if I had to start over.
Beautiful breakdown. Normally I'm not this silent, but I'm just listening to you. It's great. What are you doing right now exactly then? I know you're with some company on there. Was it the Birdhouse, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's building
Yeah.
brands, but you're also talking about AI, how you're implementing it and everything. But what's kind of your main thing? Are you still the copywriting guru, or what's going on?
Yeah. So about, I think it's been 6 months ago now again. Now I basically joined this marketing agency called The Birdhouse, and the whole reason behind that actually was exactly what I just said near the end of that explanation now, where it was like I kind of wanted to figure out what I wanted out of my life at this point was like, and I also wanted to lean more into my nature. That's been like a big overarching philosophy or like value of mine recently of like just being who you are and like doing what you're uniquely suited to do and like meant to do and all that. And I was like, it's creative work, and like a lot of things in business, like for example, doing DM outreach and like building systems and like operations type of things and all that didn't come naturally to me at all. In fact, it was like really difficult for me to do. Like those things aren't difficult in and of itself. Like anyone can do it really, but it was just difficult for me to do because it was so against what I was naturally inclined towards doing. So I was like, I don't really want to do this anymore. So I had like three options where I was like, either I need to get a business partner that has like essentially the exact opposite personality as me, where he can take care of most of those things, or I need to hire people and outsource a lot of the work, or I could just join an agency and they could just feed me clients and I just do the writing. And I was like, I don't exactly know what I want to do. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna like set the intention for what I want out of my lifestyle, and like what I want out of life right now for the next few years. And whatever direction life pushes me towards, I'll just go with that, whatever it is. And I kid you not, like 3 days later, I remember I made this decision on a Sunday. Wednesday morning or something like that, I woke up and I saw the Birdhouse post a job listing for a copywriter, basically. And I saw the post like 3 minutes after it was posted. So I applied for it. And the next day, I got a call from the CEO, Marcos, and he was like, I was kind of surprised to see that you applied because we knew each other for like 2 or 3 years before that. He was like, you're the only person that applied that I actually follow. So again, personal brand, it helps a lot because like he followed me back then. So he was like, he immediately recognized my name, and he was like I've seen the things that you've done. I've seen the client testimonials and case studies that you posted, and obviously you've been able to build your own account. So he was like, I don't see how you could not have a position on the team, basically. And then I think the day after that, he hired me, basically. And since then, like I said, for the last 6 months, I've been working with him. And yeah, now I kind of like I just dropped all of my clients at the time. I solely work with them now. I don't have like my own business, although I'm still technically a independent contractor and all that. But yeah, it's been amazing because funny enough, again, kind of like I was saying earlier, I have more of the things that I initially started a business for now than when I actually had a business. So like I started it for like, the like time, location freedom, basically the ability to like make more money, to like have control over my income and all that stuff. And I have more of that now than when I actually had my own business, which is actually funny. So yeah, I'm not sure if that answers your full question. It's kind of yapping there.
Where do you attribute your intelligence from? Your parents, your schooling? Because this is going to go on that next topic. A lot of people have preconceived notions that Africa is huts, machetes, HIV, all this stuff. I mean, I had it too. Not as much.
Yeah.
That I traveled, I met a lot of people, but I still had it a little bit when I finally went to Sub-Saharan Africa. And I went to Nairobi first, and I said, holy fuck. This is developed. These people are very smart, educated. There's still a lot of problems, of course, but especially now with Twitter, how
Yeah.
racist it's become, all these issues with the South African issue. I'm really curious though, like, where are you just reading all the time? I mean, you're spewing stuff at 19 years old that makes you sound like a guru.
Yeah, yeah, that was a funny question. Because I do get it a lot, and I think for me personally, um, okay, to be fair, I this is also why it was kind of funny for me to drop out of school. I did like well in school, like throughout my entire school career, I was basically top of my class. So it was very confusing for people when they found out that I dropped out because like usually if you drop out, it's because like you're some kind of delinquent essentially, like you start smoking weed, you become a criminal or something like that, you know. So um I guess to a degree there is some kind of like genetic factor there from like my parents, like my father's side of the family. They're all very well educated, funny enough, ironically enough. And like my mom's side, I think is also quite intelligent, actually. Like I only really realized this the last few years. I feel like because my father always kind of like told me that like my brains kind of came from his side of the family, but I was like, I don't know about that exactly. Like it could be both. So there is that aspect, I think, but I think a big reason behind it, like a big reason why this is always weird for me to say, but like people just tell me this a lot. People say I sound like quite wise a lot of times for my age, is because I'm essentially just an amalgamation of like all of the different influences and like books I've read and stuff like that that I've just like all the content I've consumed over the last few years, which has been a lot of content, like much more than I care to admit. Or at least this is what I would have said, because like it was something I was somewhat not ashamed of necessarily, but I thought it was a problem for the longest time. But then I just realized like that just is who I am. Like I'm just one of those people that like consumes an absurd amount of information about things, and I just know things, and it helps with my job, because it's like a big part of doing marketing and copywriting is just knowing things and like knowing how to spin things into creative angles, and you just need to have a lot of like knowledge for that, and that just somehow like it just works really well for me. So it really is just that. It's just like I've just gained a lot of wisdom from people who are like multiple years older than me, that have a lot more life experience than me, and I've just either taken what they said and just remembered it, or a lot of times I don't, and I still learn things the hard way. But then when I do learn things the hard way, I'm like, oh yeah, this guy talked about it. I understand what he was talking about now, basically. And then that kind of sits with me even more than like just the information that I got. So I think that's really it.
That's the problem though with a lot of people that consume the content, consume the information, they never implement it. Okay, they never make it practical
Yeah.
in the real world. So you're lucky that you had that skill to freaking take a book and learn from this 80-year-old dude who's done a lot of different things that you haven't done and actually implement his mistakes in the real world. So not many people can do that, right? And my next thing relating to that is how much more do you value information over experience, right? Because I see this all the time in this travel world, especially people talking out their ass about different things they have no idea, just like what's going on with South Africa, right now. But
Yeah.
where would do you think it's different people? Like some people can read a book and digest everything, and then other people have to go do it themselves. And what is more valuable to you? Like what is more, if I actually did this shit or if I just learned about it? You know what I mean?
Mm, that is a really good question too. I definitely have seen that different people go about this different ways. Like my best friend, for example, is like the polar opposite to me. He still like consumes information and like will read things and all that, but he doesn't really like doing that. He just likes doing things. Like again, perfect example with us is that I just got back and like we started going to the gym and all that, and like that's been kind of like a big focus for me now again, just kind of like bulking up a bit more again because I lost a lot of weight while I was in Brazil. But basically me, I basically just immediately went back to like a lot of my favorite fitness influences that I've been able to like what do you call it, curate over the years, basically. And I watched like a couple of their videos just to remind myself of like some of the things that I learned. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna build a program around this and all that. I'm like, I'm looking at their stuff as inspiration to like create my own thing and everything and all that. And he just kind of like he just does like 10 sets of pull-ups, and just does that, feels how he feels the next day, and then he kind of adjusts from there and all that. and it kind of just like, as I like to say, like unga bungas his way through it and all that, just until he learns what works for him. And it's like that's perfectly fine. It's just two different ways of going about things, you know. I just like really like learning about these types of things and understanding it so that I can like create my own thing. And he just likes doing things, like he just wants to do things as soon as possible. Whereas I'm like I'm not that way, you know. So I think it definitely depends on the person. But in terms of like what I value most, it's tough to say really. I'm leaning more towards experience, but at the same time, I also think that like there are certain things in life where you like there are certain things where you kind of just need experiential understanding of something to fully like understand it essentially. Like there are certain things that you can tell somebody or that I've been told in the past, for example, where I'm like, I can conceptualize this to a degree. I'm like, this makes sense what you're saying, but it doesn't fully hit until you actually have firsthand experience with it. And then, like I said, it's one of those moments where it's like, oh, this is what this person was talking about all that time. Like I finally actually understand what he was talking about now, you know, because it's like sometimes you just can't put it into words, you know, like you genuinely do need that direct experience with it. And all. Also, like we are just like language is just such a limited thing, you know, like there's a lot of feelings and things like that that we have as humans that we just aren't able to articulate because we just don't know how exactly, you know. So yeah, I think I would lean more towards experience in that sense, but like I said, I consume a lot of information, so like knowledge is also a big part. So I think it is just somewhat situationally dependent.
Yeah, the biggest thing is action. But if you're going to consume all the information, you just got to put forward stuff. You can't read books your whole life and not do nothing.
Yeah.
But I agree, it's two different sides to a coin. You know, me, I like to go out into the jungle and learn for myself, get slapped in the face, and then go from there. But I have had a
Yeah.
good mentor, my father. But a lot of times he's like, dude, just jump into the deep end. If you get burnt, or wait, no, if you drown, you know that's your problem. Or you know, if you touch the stove and you
Yeah.
get burnt, you learn from it, right? So, but you said Brazil. That's like the first place you kind of really took your first adventure. Why? Why was Brazil calling you? Because I know you've seen some of my content. You know, I Brazil has a special place with me. What was
Yeah.
calling you to Brazil?
Yeah, funny enough, I literally just went to Brazil because it was the cheapest country to fly to from South Africa, basically. Because like it's so expensive to get basically everywhere
It's terrible.
from
That's
South
the one
Africa.
thing I hate about Africa. The whole continent. It's so hard to travel. Like the infrastructure is terrible. Like
Yeah,
a couple hour flight is like $600 compared, you know, to Europe. Obviously, you get a couple hour flight for $60, and even South America. But it is tough. But I know that flight you're talking about. You're talking about from Johannesburg to Sao Paulo, right?
yeah,
Yeah. I
exactly
saw that
that.
one. LATAM Airlines.
No, God, it was TOG, like
Uh,
Angola airline. It was terrible. I never want to experience that again. Side note, that was the worst airport I've ever been to in my life. I genuinely never want to go there again. Um,
but it's
but
okay. The
yeah,
cheapest place.
I
There's
actually
no
did.
other calling. It was just like fuck it. I want to go explore South America.
Yeah, literally that. So South America, or like Latin America, I should rather say, was like the dream for me for like 3 years since I got into the money Twitter space. Because I've always been into like Hispanic culture and all that when I was younger. Um, but when I got onto Twitter, I just found a lot more of like guys that were like expats, you know, and like passport bros and stuff like that. That's kind of like when I got familiar with all of these terms and all that. So I came across people like God, I can't even think of their names now. Like Bowtie Passport, for example, and like who else? Who else? Jake Nomada, I think is another one. Like My Latin Lifestyle, like those types of guys, and saw all of their content and all that, and I was like, oh, Latin America, you know, like I never thought about going to like Mexico and like Colombia and stuff like that. So then I had like this one friend we would always talk about this. Like we would always talk about like Latin America, and we were like, there's literally a glitch in the matrix where it's like, you know, it's like cheap, like the okay, I don't want to say like the standard of living is quite high. That's like relative, I guess, but like you can live a good life with like fairly little money, you know. It's Latinas, you know, so, like that alone is amazing. It's like good food. You know, like the people over there are great and everything. So we're like literally just make money online, move to Latin America, and your life is solved. Like that. That's all you need out of life, basically. Like that was kind of the mindset, and we talked about this for years, basically. Um, and so I always wanted to go, and then when I decided to book the flight, I was like, oh, it's like almost yeah, like almost $1,000 just to get to one of the countries over there, basically. So Brazil was like maybe like $400 or something like that to get there, like a one way. Um, and then I just started doing more research about it, and like I started seeing it more on Twitter and all that, and I was like, oh, it actually looks pretty dope, you know? And like Rio specifically called me because I again, I'm one of those people that does a lot of research about things before I actually make a decision. So I was trying to figure out for the longest time, like, do I go to Sao Paulo? Do I go to Rio? Do I go to like um Florianopolis, you know, like to what's the place name? Fortaleza or something. And then eventually I was like, okay, I booked a flight to Sao Paulo before I even knew like what Sao Paulo was about. It was just cheaper than Rio, basically. And then I was like, okay, I need to go to Rio because it's like I got a lot of recommendations to go to Florianopolis because people said it was like safer and stuff like that. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I'll probably go to there from Sao Paulo. But I was just like, my first experience of Brazil, it just has to be Rio. It's like, it's just so iconic, you know? So I immediately went there once I landed. And then, yeah, I spent about, I was, I meant to only spend 3 weeks there, but I ended up spending 5 there, basically, because Rio just had me in a chokehold. Funny enough, I booked it because it was literally just the cheapest place I could find. And it was actually my favorite country, and I think it's like actually my favorite place on the planet right now. Like I haven't traveled much. I've only been to the US outside of South Africa so far, and like I went to Mexico very briefly, basically. But Brazil was just amazing. And it's like people will always ask me what was my favorite part about Brazil, and I hate this answer because it it doesn't really help much, but it was honestly just the vibes. It's like a mixture of the people, the surroundings, you know, like the aesthetic, like just the overall energy in Brazil. It was just amazing.
It's the air. Yeah, there's a certain beleza in the air. It's hard to replicate anywhere else that I found. Um, yeah. So you spent 5 weeks just in Rio, correct?
Yeah, in Rio, and then I went to to Goiânia for a weekend, basically, and
Yeah,
then
with a
went back
girl
to Rio.
probably. Yeah, there's some good girls over there. But
Yeah.
no, Rio's magical. Like I'll probably spend some more time there, but I
Yeah.
mean, I've been kind of all over, and I really like getting totally lost in the sauce, not seeing another gringo, and doing that Beleza vibe. But there is something magical here. Like I've been
Mm,
saying for a while, Brazil has my soul, Italy has my heart, but Brazil is a weird
mm,
thing, man. Because like if you spend a lot of time here, you start seeing what's behind the beautiful facade, and it kind of scares you and
yeah.
it hurts you and all that. But no doubt, I think everyone there's life before and life after Brazil. Like you need to go to Brazil to
Mm,
feel it. Like they will show
yeah.
you how to really make the most out of life, and the air is just different. Like I crossed the border. I was in Paraguay and we went to the falls down in the south in Pariana. I'm in Curitiba right now, the same state. And I remember just crossing the freaking border on the bridge. And like second I got to the Brazilian side, I'm like, the air is different. Like I can feel it. Like there's something going on. You know what I mean? Like it's this weird
Yeah.
feeling. I'm telling you. But no, that's beautiful that you enjoyed Brazil. You got to get you back here. Let's start living over here for a little bit and check it out.
Definitely. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
let's
definitely.
go to this
Like,
topic that's actually obviously in the news a lot. The president of your country
mm,
was in the White House, and it was a whole shabacle. Um, like I said, I
yeah.
did a podcast with a dude who told me kind of the horrors of what's going on there. He didn't say there's a white genocide, but he
Mm,
said shit's fucked up, especially with the farmers and so forth. I
mm,
know it's dangerous. Okay, tell me
yeah.
from your opinion, as you said you're a colored guy. I said you're a brother, but
Yeah.
you're
Yeah.
mixed. What the
Yeah.
fuck is going on down there? Because I was gonna go there, dude. I was so excited to go there. I was gonna go to
Mm,
Johannesburg to see the Canine Reaper, and then I was gonna go to Oriana,
mm,
which is that all white
yeah.
the village thing. I was gonna check it out, do a vlog, and then I was gonna go chill in Cape Town. But I fell in love with Kenya, so I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck it, I'm gonna stay in Kenya for 3 months.
Mm,
But I'm gonna go back. My friend was just there, Chris, the
yeah.
freelancer, and
Oh
tell
yeah,
me
yeah.
tell me what the hell's going on. Okay, what is actually happening from on the ground?
So the whole like honestly, I found out about these things when I think both times when I was overseas, to be honest, like the whole like farmer thing and all that. Funny enough, I met a couple of farmers on the flight to America the first time I went there. And I think around that time, either while I was in the States or like just as I got back, I started to kind of see these things on Twitter about like, like the genocide thing and like what's his name, Julius Malema, like a political leader of like one of the political parties over here, the EFF. He was like singing the song like kill the Buddha, that type of thing. And then like a couple months later, I started hearing these things about like like the farmers being killed and whatnot. And like when I was in Brazil, I think I heard the whole thing about the whole this I think the street somewhere where there's a bunch of crosses, like a bunch of graves essentially on the street for every farmer that was killed and all that. So I basically know as much as like anybody else that is interested in the topic or like has done any kind of research or heard about the topic so far as that's concerned, like I guess you could say like media, political side of things and all that. But in terms of like my first-hand experience just of like what South Africans are like and like racism in South Africa and all that, it's like it might be a bit different for me because I I don't live anywhere near like cities or anything. Like the closest city from here is maybe like okay, city is like 200 kilometers away or so. It's like almost a 2 hour drive basically. And then like there's like towns around me, but like they all, again like 100 kilometers away or so and all that. So like I don't get to experience what it's like to be in like cities in South Africa too often. But even when I've been there, I feel like it's been somewhat similar to my experience here, where I feel like South Africans are like fairly racist, don't get me wrong, but it's like more of like a low-key racism from my experience again, and like from what I've heard from other people, where it's like, God, but it's also so difficult to say it again. It's like such a nuanced thing where it's like, for the most part, I feel like almost everybody is a bit racist in the sense of like pattern recognition in a way where it's like and I feel like this is like everywhere across the world, but like South Africans just talk about this a bit more openly, I think, where it's like you just know that based on whatever race it is, there's gonna be like certain expectations with that, right? So it's like if I go to like for myself, for example, perfect example of this, when I go to Cape Town, right, and I'm gonna stay somewhere and I'm like gonna go out or whatever and all that, me personally, I will most of the time look for where the white people go because it's like I just know it's gonna be safer. It's gonna be like a wealthier area. I'm not gonna have to deal with any BS that's gonna happen over there, basically like fights and violence and stuff like that. Because honestly, like it sounds kind of bad to say and everything, but like that does mostly happen in places where there's like mainly colored and black people. So it's more things like that, you know? But there are definitely people that have like experienced more like racism in a hateful sense, you know? Like I know some friends, for example, mostly black friends, to be honest with you, that have experienced this more. Like I've never experienced it personally, like from usually it's like from white people or whatever. Um, but at the same time, it's like again where I'm from, like white people, colored people, like black people, like when they get angry at each other or whatnot, they'll like just start flinging around like racial slurs and things like that, and like like random things like that. You'll experience it, but to me at least, it's kind of weird because it's so normal to me that I'm just like, oh, that just happens every now and then. Like somebody just gets mad, they call this person that thing or whatever, or like they'll just like a lot of my family members, like the older members of my family, especially the guys, like they are like quite racist. Where it's like they'd like just assume the worst things about certain races, like just based on like stereotypes and all that. So there it definitely is still that and like remnants. I feel like of the apartheid era where again a lot of black and colored people that I met and that I know and all that you can tell that they still have like somewhat of a almost like a generational inferiority complex for like compared to white people basically where it's like it's certain small things where it's like, if you talk about something that's like fairly expensive or like kind of bougie or something like that, people will say, "Oh no, that's white people things. We don't do that." Or like if like people think of like if the straighter your hair is, for example, or like the looser your curls is, that's better. That's like nice hair. That's good hair, basically. Like there's things like that that's in the culture, definitely. And like, yeah, like people will just start to kind of get a bit um like a bit more reserved, a bit more timid and stuff like that around white people because they don't want to like embarrass themselves in front of them by like being themselves, which is like more what do you call it? Like, well, what word can I even use? I can't really think of like a good word, but like they don't want to act like too ghetto or like too ratchet around white people, basically. Like there's things like that. But yeah, yeah, yeah. That's basically been my experience. It's all over the place, man. And I feel like it's also different depending on where you go. Like I don't know exactly, but I feel like I've heard, for example, that people have had more bad experiences with like racism in Cape Town, for example, compared to Johannesburg for like specifically black people. Like I've heard people that have said that they went to Cape Town and like they could still feel like this sense of racism. Like again, for example, in like clubs from what I've seen, or even like one of the schools I went to, I remember black people and white people or like colored people, white people, everybody, they'll kind of hang out with each other and all that in public. But there's this thing where oftentimes I've mostly seen this with white people where they will kind of like form their own groups and they will kind of like hang out separately from everybody else. And they don't do this like in a bad way where it's like you're not invited or anything. It's just like they all kind of stick together and they just do their own thing. I've seen this in like schools. I've seen this in like clubs. Like again, there's like white clubs in South Africa. And it's like it's not exclusively white people. There's no rule or anything like that, but like you'll mostly just see white people there, you know? Because it's like they just kind of stick together and it's like things are more expensive there and all that. And like most of the wealthy people in South Africa, I feel like are probably white people in comparison to like their, what do you call it? Like relative to the population, basically. So there'll be like things like that. Um, what was the point I was making with all of this? I forgot. But yeah, yeah, that's essentially it.
Very interesting. One I noticed that big time in Kenya when you said the inferiority complex. Jeez, my words.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like white is right. Okay, the lighter their skin, the better. The hair,
Mm,
they wear the wigs. There was a lot of,
yeah.
especially on the coast. The coast, I think, was a lot more about money. It's like the Mzungu is the only way that a lot of these people are gonna like get out of poverty. That's what a girl from
Mm,
Mombasa told me. I did a whole podcast with her, and that's kind of like the general perception from many because it's very poor on the Kenyan coast. But Nairobi, a lot more educated, a lot more money, but I still felt the remnants of for sure colonialism in other aspects related to this. Now, I got some rapid fire questions here, so hold on. So one of your grandparents was white, right?
no, no,
Mixed.
no. Yeah, all of them are like mixed, basically.
This is this better in South Africa? Your skin compared to someone that's totally black, like Kenya. Kenya's light skin is better.
Basically, like you'll just get better treatment overall. You seem like as more attractive by most people in the country, things like that.
Is your village safe? You can walk out whenever you want with the phone. You don't get worried about robbed. Is the village life in South Africa safe?
It depends. So where I stay, for example, there's like a bunch of small communities in sort of a like almost like a state, I guess you could think of it in a way, like the over-encompassing place, which is like it spans probably about 100 kilometers total, is like this place called Tsitsikamma, basically. But within there, there's a bunch of smaller communities. There's like where I stay, Thornham, Clarkson, Storms River, all of these places basically, and we're like quite close together. So like I know a lot of people from all of these areas because we all went to the same schools because there's like three good school options over here. So everybody just sends their children over there, even if it's like 50 kilometers away. It's like a 30-minute drive every morning to school. So in some of like the neighboring communities, they're oftentimes like they'll come over here and they'll like move to places close to here basically, and they are oftentimes the ones that like commit a lot of the crimes over here. Like where I stay now used to be a lot safer in the past because it was just us in this place. But since there's been like more people kind of like moving here from other places, it's become a lot less safe recently. But at the same time, it's still somewhat safe if you just know people because everybody just knows everybody here. So like you won't really do anything to anyone if like you're somewhat respected basically. So yes and no, depending on like who you are and like how many people you know, like how what type of reputation do you have and things like that. But overall, probably not. Wouldn't do it.
How corrupt is your government, do you think? Do you have any faith in them, or are they just crooks?
Yeah, no faith whatsoever. Like it's bad. It's really bad.
Okay. What party is that? What's the name of the party?
I think the main party that's always been dominant has been the ANC.
ANC.
That's like, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think that's like the party that like the old president Jacob Zuma was a part of, and you know all of these things.
So let me ask you this. Okay. Nelson Mandela, was he a freedom fighter or a terrorist communist? And there's nuance in it too.
I've never heard that. Uh, from what I know, I haven't looked into the the latter part of that statement at all. Um, so I only know about the fighter part of things, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was like another darker side to him or anything like that. You know, it's like I feel like most things in life are like that, where it's like it's not actually what you've been told, you know. So it could be either one, you know.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Obviously, we grow up in USA. Oh, Nelson Mandela, the hero, and apartheid and all that. But who was funding him and what's
Yeah.
happened to South? That's what I want to ask you too. Since apartheid has ended, is South Africa became better or worse
I think better overall.
for the
Like there's
people?
probably some things that have become worse, but like yeah, yeah, definitely better.
How
Like
bad
I
was
think
it
also
underneath
Nelson Mandela was
apartheid?
probably a net positive. From what I've heard, because obviously I didn't experience it, pretty bad. Like really bad. Like for like colored and black people, obviously. Like they essentially just didn't have rights as humans, essentially, you know? So it's like, yeah, compared to then, like things are so much better now, you know? So yeah, yeah.
What do you think of colonialism?
Uh, what is that exactly? Like, what would your definition be of that? Like, you know, like other countries colonizing another
Europe
country, essentially?
slicing up Africa and taking everything, the
Yeah.
resources, the bad
Ah, okay,
version.
yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, overall, what do you think about the British or the Dutch coming down there, owning, enslaving people? Doing some good stuff. They built a lot of infrastructure, but they did cut off a
Mm,
bunch of hands in the Congo, the Belgian king or whatever.
yeah, yeah. Uh, God, that it's tough to say. I feel like, again, I don't really know too much about all of this, like the history and all that and the specifics. But I feel like it did some positives, you know, like you said, like building the infrastructure and stuff like that. I feel like a lot of South Africa wouldn't be what it is today if some of those things didn't happen. But at the same time, a lot of bad things happened as a result of it. So 50-50, probably. I don't know.
Yeah, it's nuanced, but it's just fascinating. Like I see the photos of South Africa and I see, oh my God, it was such a beautiful place. And, of course they have specific photos. And then you see what's happening now. You're like, what the hell is
Yeah.
going on? But of course, majority of the population had zero rights, like you were talking about. So obviously that's not, a beautiful thing to be under. But it's it's interesting. I want to explore a lot more of Africa because I was shocked. I was very surprised. I honestly felt safer in Kenya than I did in most of Latin America, besides like Argentina and like, touristic spots. But like Brazil, Colombia, I mean, Kenya, I felt like Hakuna Matata. Like I really did. And if you'd have told me that beforehand, I'd say you're crazy. You know what I mean? Because everything we're told, we learn about, and so forth. So it's a fascinating continent. I will say this too. Just how you felt in Brazil. Obviously I feel similar in Brazil, but Africa, the African feeling bro. When I was down in Kenya, I'm
Mm,
like, damn, this nature, the people, like the
yeah,
vibe. Like I felt like I was like an explorer, and there's a certain energy to your continent. Would you agree on that or no?
yeah, 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 definitely. I said to people that like Rio felt very similar to Cape Town for me in many ways. And I feel like people in South Africa have very similar energy to Latin people, actually, in the sense that like they're very friendly, very open and warm, basically, like a lot of cultural things, that they have a lot of pride in and all that, and that they celebrate and everything. So like I really like that, and even like some of the places, like you said, the nature, things like that, that I also really like about South Africa, and I think that's like all of that is a big reason why I would probably still live. Like I'm probably gonna live here for most of my life, like have a base here at least. I'll probably still like live in other countries for certain periods of time or however long that's gonna be. I don't know. I could make up my mind about this at some point, but I could see myself living here long term, basically, because of all of those things. Like it's honestly great. Like I love it here.
Every African I talk to, they're like, "This is the motherland. Like, I feel at home here, even with all the shit that's going on. Like, I love
Yeah.
it. I really do." And I felt similar. Like, if it was the better infrastructure, if I could get around without bribing people and corrupt cops and all that shit, like, I
Mm.
would stay there for a couple years to see everything. Like, it really, I felt something, big time. Okay, last thing here. I had a point, but I forgot it. So let's talk about this. Now you're 19 years old. You're making money. You're making Wi-Fi
Mm.
money. You took care of your
Mm.
parents. The travel bug is starting to catch you, right? So, what is kind of
Yeah.
your idea? You're just talking about bases. I'll have one in Cape Town, but I mean, are you gonna start getting on the road long term now? Like, start living a little nomadically? What's the plan?
That's actually a really good question. I've been kind of putting off thinking about this because one of the things I realized when I was in, like, just in Latin America as a whole, around the fourth week or so, like in when I was still in Brazil, I remember having a call with my mom, and I was like, like I'm really enjoying myself here. Like I love it here and all that, but like I wouldn't be upset if I had to come home now for whatever reason, like if I had to cut the trip short for whatever reason, I'd be fine. And then eventually, like once I got to Mexico, for example, I was just there for a week. I was planning on staying for like another month or so. I was like, I, I kind of like, I was kind of over traveling at that point. Like I was like, I want to be at home again. I want to have like, like my desk set up here again. Like again, this is also one of the things I haven't been able to use my laptop for like since leaving Brazil, basically, because like there's been some kind of issues with it where it doesn't want to go on, and then took it in for repairs. They said it's gonna take like a week or two for it to get fixed because they need this part or whatnot. So I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna buy a new one next week. So there was that as well, and it was like a lot of things going on with work and everything. But I was just like, after a while. I was just like, I kind of got all of this out of my system, like just the more spontaneous life, the more like partying, like some degeneracy, a healthy amount of that and all that. Um, and I was just like, I just want to get back to a routine where I just have like I said, kind of like a base. I have like a set routine. I have my home gym. I have like my own foods in the house, like my family members are here, my mom and all these things. So I kind of realize, long story short, that I'm somewhat of a homebody where I like to have my own like house environment type of space and all that. So I'm considering whether or not I would just like stay in South Africa most of the time. I kind of want to move to like a beach town near where I stay and get an apartment there. But like I'm considering just doing that and then every couple of months just traveling for like a month or two or however long it takes to just kind of like get over it, kind of, and then just come back. Or I just stay in a country more long term for like 3 months or so, and then have like an Airbnb or something like that, and kind of simulate the whole feeling of having like my own place there and my own routine and stuff like that. So I think I just need to experiment with it. So I'll probably try that, like where I'll stay in one country, for example, for like 3 months, and then just see how I like that, and see if it's like if it feels the same and if it feels right for me. But other than that, I would probably just like go to places on vacation. Like I want to go to Thailand next, most likely at some point, like maybe the end of the year, next year, or something like that. And then obviously next year I want to go back to Brazil for like carnival for like a week. I think that'll be, I don't know if I'm gonna enjoy it or not, but like I want to experience it, so it'll be more like that type of vibe.
Yeah, my advice to you, being 19 years old, living in a village that will never change, that you can always come back to. It'll be
Yeah,
Hakuna Matata. The people
yeah,
doing the same things is you need to do it and you need to find your routine over there. So I guarantee you went to Brazil. You said, "Oh my God, look at all this bunda. These people want to party. The beaches. Like you get lost in the
yeah,
sauce, right? You burn out super quick. Okay,
yeah,
I want to go back home to mom, my family, have my desk set up. But like you said,
yeah,
you do a place, you say, hey, I'm gonna do it for 3 months, okay, and then I'm gonna go from there. I'll have my desk in the Airbnb. I'll have have 2 laptops, have 2 phones in case one breaks. You're gonna be set. Find your routine. Like I do morning affirmations in the morning. I meditate at night. Obviously, get your workout in, but you can create a home-like
yeah,
environment in your brain, okay. A lot of people when they first start traveling, it's just okay. I go fucking crazy for a week in a hotel in Cancun, and they're so excited to be home because you get burnt out super fast. But when you actually say, no, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do my normal routine, I'm going to live like I'm living normally, you get the best of both worlds. You get that routine, and also you get new excitement, new patterns, new crazy experiences that you could never get in the village 2 hours away from the nearest city in South Africa. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you're 19 years old, bro. You need to do it, especially if you got the funds, especially if there's a calling inside of you. And I'll help you out. We'll get you settled. We'll get you chilling, and you'll be on a routine, and it'll be crazy. It'll be great. But I agree, especially the Africans. I noticed that you guys have strong family bonds and all that, and you need to be close. And like I see my parents maybe once a year if I'm lucky. That's tough. Okay, but you
yeah.
have to do it at your age right now because like I couldn't imagine being 19 and being able to do it like you are. I mean that's pretty impressive. So take advantage.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely something to think about because my a friend of mine actually said this a similar thing where he asked me, would I ever live in Rio? And I was like, I don't know because like there's just so many distractions, like there's just so many things to do and all that, and it's like if I'm in a period where I want to work and kind of like focus a bit more, it would be kind of difficult there. But then he said that like visiting a place and staying there for like a month or something like that for vacation and actually living there are like two completely different experiences. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good point because I'm sure like at some point it's like you just do all of the things that you kind of wanted to do. Like you've seen all the places you wanted to see and it just becomes like somewhat normal to you, and like again, you have like your own home and all that, not staying in a hostel, where you're like sharing a room with 8 other people and you can barely get any sleep and stuff like that. So just it's a lot different of an experience. And I think I definitely need to do it because one of the big lessons I learned from being there is basically that I really need to experience things for myself to see whether or not I actually like it or not, because like there's a lot of assumptions that you can make about things where you're like, okay, I think I'll like this, or like I don't think I would like this for whatever reason. But until you actually try it, you're never really gonna know because like there's so many unforeseen variables that you can't really take into account for that you can't see coming that you just need to see, once you're there or experience once you're there.
100%. You have no idea who you are until you're in a foreign world that you don't speak their language, you don't understand their architecture, your patterns are all broken. There's no one that cares about you near you. It's just
Yeah.
you, your balls, and nothing else. That's where you realize, okay, damn. I grew up watching American football, but now, I mean, I don't really care. Everyone else in the world, they play freaking soccer. You know what I mean? So I probably would never liked American football if I grew up outside of USA. A lot of dudes, okay, I don't want to dance. That's gay. But all of a sudden you go down to Colombia and you start doing salsa. You're like, oh, this is really cool. Like I feel good dancing. I feel alive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like these points, like you're programmed from a young age, culturally, socially, religiously, to be this person you are. From you, all the content you watched, okay? But I don't think you really find out who you are until it's like everything is stripped away and there's nothing external to define you, and that's where you're like, damn, no, this makes me happy, this doesn't. So that's the power of travel, in
Yeah.
my opinion. That's the power of living outside your comfort zone, and few people ever do it. And if you have the chance to do it, I guarantee 0 people, maybe 1 in your freaking village went to Brazil. How many people from your village that went to Brazil?
No one I know of.
Exactly. I mean, so you're fucking lucky. I
Yeah,
would take
doubt
full
it.
advantage of it and then
Yeah,
inspire the next guy to do it.
that's a good point. Yeah, really good point. Really put it into perspective.
See, Perfect, my amigo. Hey, great conversation. Hopefully the glitchy South African Wi-Fi will be fine. I'll figure it out. But for the people that listen to this, say, damn, you inspired me. I want to talk to you about something more. Where can they get in contact with you?
Yeah, Twitter or X.com, probably the best one. Suleiman _ Bueta, basically. Or Instagram, one of the two. Same handle, basically.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, hit up Sully Man. How do you pronounce Sully Man?
Suleiman.
Suleiman. I'm terrible with names, but that's a funky name. It's a unique name. But it was a pleasure, my friend, meeting you after tweeting and seeing each other on X for a while. And I hope to see you back over here soon. I'll be here 6 months in Curitiba. After, I'll probably go to Chile or maybe Ecuador for summer. And then some crazy shit's gonna happen. I'll be in probably Spain for 3 months, opening up an office. So come find me, amigo. Okay, I'll show you a good time.
Yeah, man. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. It was a blast. Always enjoy doing things like this. You asked a bunch of good questions as well. So, yeah.
Perfect. Everyone else, live bold.